Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast life. Today I am joined by Rachel Jacobs, who works with the McElroy family, and they have many podcasts. I will not name them all, but a couple are The Adventure Zone and My Brother, and Me, which I actually saw the latter live in Seattle last year, so that was fun. But Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I just got off a kind of hot record of my Bim Bam, so I've been working on it straight as fast as I possibly could, or as I was saying, I'm working on it faster than fear within reason.
Nice. And I actually wanted to start with, how did you end up working with the McElroy family? They've been podcasting for so long. How long have you been working with them?
This is either my fourth or my fifth year. I started at the end of December 2020, so essentially January 2021. So that makes this my fifth year with them. That's crazy. So I had been working previously in podcasts before for a couple of years. I actually had my first job ever was in publishing. I worked as a graphic designer, and then I was like, this sucks actually. And I tried my best to get into podcasting kind of during the peak of podcasting. So there was a lot of stuff going on. Everybody wanted a podcast. But eventually I found myself working full-time for a company called Audio Boom. They still exist. They're still doing podcasts. Their main income is from rev share with other podcasts. So they sell ads for other podcasts and they do a rev share with them. And that's where a lot of their income comes from. But they also have in-house podcasts, original shows. Some they just buy shows and then give to their in-house team to make from then on. So I was on the in-house team. I was one of two people on the in-house team. When I started, there was one other person. When I left, there were three other people, I think. Okay. So it was a little bit better, but it was a lot for one person to handle. It was a lot for two people to handle. But the other producer there was a guy named Ben Hosley, who is a producer on a show called Blank Check.
Okay.
And so I started also working on Blank Check and met the nice fellas that run that, David and Griffin. And through that, that made that connection. After 2020, I started looking for new employment. It was a time where everybody was like, maybe I could do a different job. The business manager of the McElroys reached out to me and were like, hey, we're actually looking for an editor. And Ben Hosley said that you are an editor.
That's great. I wanted to talk to you today about the different editing process for the different shows, because something like The Adventure Zone is obviously more of this role-playing podcast, and then you have My Brother and Me, which is kind of just them talking and sharing funny stories, and it's a very different vibe, even though the overall tone, I would say, of the family of shows is very similar. There's always this playfulness to their podcast, and I really like that. But for you as the editor, how does something like The Adventure Zone differ from something like My Brother and Me?
What's funny is that The Adventure Zone and My Brother and Me are, at their cores, actually really similar editing styles. And it's mostly because the people are all in different rooms. And when people are in the same room, it's a much different editing process than when they are in different rooms. Because when you're in a different room, you can mute somebody, you can rearrange stuff however you need to. If there's weird gaps in them talking, or if they're talking over each other, you can fix that pretty easily.
Yeah.
But in any of the shows with the wives, so Sawbones, for example, which is a fairly noisy show sometimes, is the two of them in a room. It's Justin and Dr. Sydney in a room. And anytime they need an edit for just one of them, I have to hope that the other one was quiet. I run multiple filters on those shows actually before I even dive into them to get rid of the bleed if I can, to get rid of some noise if I can. And the hope is that that'll help.
Yeah, I know how that goes. I have one, it's a video podcast, and they will often record like in a podcast studio with like the multicam setup and everything. And they will give me edit notes based on the transcript though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which one, the transcript doesn't even get all of the words sometimes.
Oh, it's one of the auto ones.
Yeah, because they just like run it through real quick. I think they might do like the backup recording on Riverside.
Yeah, Riverside does an auto.
Yeah, and just pull the auto transcript. And sometimes I'm like, these words weren't there, but I will do what I can with these
vaguely
notes.
Sounds like it. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll get timestamps and I'm like, I don't know what timestamp that is. I'll just listen for what that edit is.
Yeah, yeah. I usually tell people, I'm like, okay, if you want to give me edit notes, also give me like verbal cues in the edit notes with the timestamps, because some people will like just hit play on Dropbox when I send it to them instead of downloading it. So like, because of Dropbox being Dropbox, their timestamps never match up with what I have in like Premiere or Resolve. And I'm just like, why are you like this, Dropbox?
That's so wild. It's like how Premiere and Audition don't play nice with each other, and like everything gets super messed up, even though they're the same program, kind of.
Yeah, I used to do like the multi-track export from like Premiere to Audition, and one day a client was like, hey, something's weird with the audio. And I was like, can you tell me where or what the problem is? He's just like, no, it's just garbled. And I was like, it's not when I go in Premiere. And then I realized that something was happening between Premiere and Audition.
Oh my God.
And it was getting screwed up. And like someone would just start talking while the other person was talking that wasn't there before. And I was just like, what is this?
So wild. Yeah, the video editor and I have had like, we're trying to find a process to like, if I need to edit something for him, it's like, okay, don't touch the times, don't edit any content, like lock them in place and then start editing, because otherwise it's going to mess up everything.
Yeah, I will sometimes like process audio in Pro Tools before pulling it into Premiere or Resolve. And I'm just like, okay, remember, slip mode. Don't do shuffle mode. Yes. Do not move anything.
That's one of the things I like about Audition, is that you don't have shuffle mode.
See, that would drive me crazy because of how often I use it for everything else.
There are other tools that act like shuffle mode, but there's nothing automatically in shuffle mode. So if you move things around, you don't accidentally move everything around and get things out of sync.
Yeah, that's actually too bad their audio doesn't play nice with Premiere like it's supposed to.
I know. One day. I say one day, it's not going to happen. You just have to learn how to work around it.
Yeah. Speaking of Adobe, have you used like their enhanced speech feature at all?
I did once, and we didn't particularly like it. It's fine. Yeah, they released a version 2 recently, but one thing I've noticed using that, because I've had to use it a lot until at least I get better EQ skills on my end, and every once in a while it just tosses in random sounds and I won't realize it until like later, and I'm like, hi, hello, sorry, I have to send you another file because there's just this random noise from a person who is not the person speaking. It reminds me of like, I used a lot of Photoshop when I was doing graphic design, and like there's clone tools and they use AI, and sometimes it just puts in something random from somewhere else and you just have to clean that up manually. And I'm sure it's using very, very similar technology, except with sound instead of video. Actually, I want to go back to the Adventure Zone process for a second, because I just talked about that they're not in the same room, and that was kind of where I ended it. But
I derailed us with Adobe Talks.
Oh no, it's fine. But like, yes, the Adventure Zone is a process by itself. And in fact, like I have, my boss can do my job. Our business manager can do edits if she needs to. And our video editor can do a couple of the show edits if he needs to. Apparently nobody else can do Adventure Zone though. Because my process is weird or something. It's just a lot. It is not just keeping the sound good. It's like, I'm actually not in charge of making sure that it's consistent, or what do you call it? What's the
like
word?
Keeping the storyline?
Yeah, the continuity. Yeah, that's not my job. But like, I actually started editing it in dice sounds because it sounds weird when they keep rolling dice and they're not making noise, because they use Roll20. But every season is also a little bit different, especially when there's different DMs. Half of them are like, I don't have anything to say. Let's just go for something. And I'm like, cool. Because I'm trying to do a kind of unique soundscape is the wrong word, but like a different kind of sound palette for each of the seasons are a little bit different. So like the current one is kind of 90s themed, cartoon themed. So it's a lot of like guitars, a lot of like pop punk stuff, a lot of like kind of cartoony sound effects and silly music, if I can get that. Last season, Dracula was so fun. That was all classic piano, which I spent many hours searching on Muse Open, which is an open source, copyright free sheet music and classical recordings website, and just like being like, does this vibe fit? No, this vibe doesn't fit.
Well, at least you didn't have to pay for a ton of rights to stuff for that one, or like pay for licenses. That has been like my biggest thing with putting music in podcasts. Like,
Yeah.
I had helped edit this D&D podcast, I want to say almost 2 years ago now. And it's funny that you mentioned the dice rolls, because what she did was she recorded the different type of dice, because like each person had their own, and then I would just input them based on like who was rolling and how many times they were rolling, and it was just so much easier. It kind of reminded me of when I was interning at a recording studio, and I would just like copy and paste the best kick drum sound over all the rest of the kick drums in the song, and I was like, oh, I'm used to this I can do. But
it's very good.
Yeah, with something like that, just the pacing of how people talk was so different from how I've edited anything else, because a lot of what I work on are current event political podcasts, and they're just like, we want every single taken out. We don't want any you knows. And sometimes it just sounds a bit unnatural, because, you know, that's how I've been asked to edit it. So I do what is asked. But with this, she was like, you don't have to rush it. And it was like the first time I ever edited something where I was asked to take 8 hours to edit, like,
oh, very nice,
an hour. And I was like, you want me to what now? How much time?
Oh, it is always kind of nice to have like that time to edit. This season especially has been taking me a very long time. Travis has wanted me to get rid of a lot of crutch words if I can. So I've been doing my best with that, but like I simply do not have time to sit down and comb through it, but I've been doing my best with it. It has been taking a while.
I was just so used to being like, hey, turn this 20-minute interview around in 40 minutes, because like all the political shows I edit same day.
Oh, God.
And I'm just like, oh, what is this time? I have so much of it.
That is pretty nice. That's that's rather demanding. I think for anything that isn't like a news show, I would expect like 48-hour turnaround at least.
One posts 4 times a week and the other is 3 times a week. So there's literally an episode every day of the week. So it's just like record, next day it's out, record, next day it's out, record, next day it's out.
That is exhausting, actually. And is it just you on the team, or are there like other people also working on this?
I am the only editor.
Okay. That's exhausting.
So I get everything from the producer, and then I do the edits, and then they like go through and do like the content, like assembly and content edits.
Oh yes, assembly and content edits for all the clips and the audio stuff.
Another question about the Adventure Zones, though. You mentioned how like each season the sound palette will change. Are you also doing the sound design for the episodes? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm the only editor on staff. We have our video editor for Mabim and Taz mostly, or anything that we're like concerned about needs a second view. We have my boss, our business manager, Amanda, will like take a listen through, and our content manager, Sarah, will also like take a quick listen through for like anything that they might need to flag, because these are our two like biggest shows. So they want to make sure that like content wise, everything is square. But I'm the only person that I'm the only one that's making the decisions on what background sound music, what sound effects, how I put in sound effects, all that stuff. I'm the only person doing it. Occasionally, if Griffin is the DM, he will have ideas. Sometimes I will argue with him, but mostly he's pretty set on his ideas, and he has very good ideas. So sometimes Griffin will have an idea. For this season, we started out with a few PSAs at the end of the episodes. That was all Travis's idea. Steeplechase, Justin's season. He wanted to do previously ons as like a Disney blogger. Sorry, not Disney. You know what I mean. It was a Disney blogger. Like up front. So he had his friend Autumn do that, and like that was all his idea. But we were trying to talk about what the rest of it was, and I was like, hey, what about like each zone has a different piece of music for it? Like when you're in Disney, you go into Tomorrowland and it has a different piece of music, and then you walk into Space Mountain and that has different music. And he's like, that sounds fine. And then that was kind of the whole conversation.
Yeah, and with the Adventure Zone, is it all recorded in one go, or are you getting it in bits and pieces, especially when they do the things like the PSAs and, you know, having someone else do little bits and pieces here and there?
The little bits and pieces. So if it's anybody else aside from the four McElroy men, it is recorded separately and sent to me at some point before the episode goes out. I got a lot of PSAs up front, and not that we ran out of them, but like they were trickling in like much slower as the show went on. I think it's gone on longer than we expected. Not a bad thing. Just we thought it was going to be like 10 episodes, and we're on 24. I think at this
That's
point.
a bit longer.
Yeah. So all those pieces come in separately. Mostly each episode, especially, they've gotten into their own rhythm of like, well, this is the day we record, so we're going to try to do a whole episode. And sometimes things don't work out, or sometimes they are like, we don't like the way that this is going. We actually want to stop and try again a different time. But most of the time they sit down, they chug out an hour-long episode that needs a little bit of editing. And yeah, it's pretty wild. They've gotten it down to an art, I think.
They've certainly been doing it long enough to do that. And with all of the different seasons, are they typically recording in advance, or is this something where like you're getting the episode, you have a week to turn it around, and it's sometimes a struggle?
A very good question. Since I started, before I started, Taz was actually every other week because it is a lot of work. And Griffin was doing all the edits that were happening. He used to do Adventure Zone in Audacity, and I still don't know how. Some point they were like, we have an editor now, we're gonna do it weekly, unless the DM like had some conflicts. I started in January 2021. There was a lot of stuff going on like in the world in general. There was a big snowstorm in Texas. Like there was a lot of stuff that was happening in everybody's lives. But at some point it turned to weekly, and we've been trying very hard lately, and by we I mean our business manager Amanda has been working on the schedule to make it so that I always have Taz 2 weeks in advance. We had a backlog for a bit. We are currently do not, because there's been some vacations and some like family stuff, so we knew that this week would be a little bit weird, but like I'm still a week ahead, so that's better than I think when we started, there were some times where it was like, well, this is due in 2 days.
Yeah, and that's why you do the backlog in case of vacations or family emergencies. And I say this as someone who currently does not have a backlog for my own podcast, but it's just me. So it's a little easier to just be like, hey, can someone come on the podcast like right now?
Oh, yeah. So like, I'm glad I have that. It gives me a little bit more time to work on it, and also like make sure that I'm not working on it stupid hours. It allows me to keep normal hours also, like knowing what the schedule is. It took us a while to figure out a record schedule for all the shows, but now I think it's fairly consistent. There's some anomalies, but like, you know, things happen, and it's easier to deal with one podcast that isn't recording during its normal time than 6 podcasts that are recording during weird times.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty good. Although, what was it? I went on the Joko cruise first week of March, and I was going to be completely incommunicado. So I was like, all right, we got to get Taz done, that Taz done, the Taz after it done, and like obviously the Taz before it done. And kind of the Thursday before I left, or was it maybe the Tuesday before I left, actually, they were like, actually, should we put out that live show of Taz that we recorded last week instead of the one we were planning on? And I'm like, oh, okay. But honestly, a Taz live show is easier to edit because I don't have to do any sound design. So
speaking of the live shows, I actually wanted to ask how your role differs for the live shows and the regular episodes, because I know you are sometimes, if not always, in attendance for the live shows.
When I can be, essentially. There was one year where one of the tours was during my fiance's brother's wedding, so I couldn't make that one.
Valid.
But we figured it out. They've been recording live shows before I was around, but essentially it was all, as far as I was told, it was Travis had an H6 Zoom recorder, and then he would just like plug it in and then like press record and run away. For the live shows, I'm essentially there to record the live shows for use in the future. Not all of them are used. There have been vague talks about using them, but it's usually for like somebody's on vacation or there's a lot of stuff going on and we can't record bim bam, so we need to put out a live show. This especially happened a lot when some of the kids were born, so not that there's going to be less use of them in the future, but like I think all the kids are born.
No more on the way at the moment.
Not that I know of. But essentially, I'm there on site to record all of them on separate tracks, so like a better recording than they used to have for ease of editing for the Bim Bam and Taz live shows. And then I'll edit on the road also. So it's been more than once. They've been like, well, we're going to record this episode on Thursday and then it's going to come out Monday. And I'm like, cool. So I'll have the recording and I'll be able to like work on it as we're on a bus or something. Not ideal, but like I can. The tour manager, Paul Saborin of Paul and Storm, also does, he's like also back crew. He does the kind of video portion of it. He's the one that reaches out to all the venues and like gets what the specs are, tells them what the stage setup should be, and also has been connecting me with all of the venues. So I'll usually talk to an audio engineer there if I can about like what I need for the setup. So it's been a lot smoother than it was when it started, which was just me showing up with a recorder and being like, hey, can I plug in somewhere? Can I plug into your board? Is that okay? So we've gotten the process down a lot. But yeah, it's to get technical about it, I guess I just plug in. I have I have two H6Ns, this recorder here. The one I have on the shelf behind me in the case has 2 more inputs. So we do one of all of the boys, one of each of all the boys, the audience mic, the voiceover mic, which is usually Clint if he's around to do the intro. Okay. And then we have the voice of God mic, which is Paul, who usually doesn't say anything, but sometimes he does, and then it becomes integral to the show somehow.
Got to make sure he's mic'd up at all times.
Exactly. And then the most important thing actually is I have a Zoom, the other Zoom recorder is our mono mix backup. And that is there in case anything goes wrong with any of the mics, or if somehow something else that is not on my separate tracks needs to be recorded. the example that I have, no shade to him. He's a great guy. He's an extremely talented DM, to Brennan Lee Mulligan. I love this man. He's great. We did a show with him in DC several years ago called Dadlands, which is a silly RPG of the boys' own invention, where they draw poker chips out of a fanny pack instead of rolling dice. So Brennan is the default DM for Dadlands. Like, I don't know how much like they fed him, but like he has so many ideas for Dadlands. He is, again, an extremely talented DM, an extremely lovely human. I was only given four mic outputs in DC. Just the venue is like this. There's a lot of new technology being implemented, and there's a lot of people who have been dealing with older technology, and they're not quite caught up to each other yet. I will put it that way.
Yeah.
So I was only given four outputs. So I'm like, okay, this is Taz. I need all four of the mics to be the four boys on stage. Oh God. How did I even do that? I must have put two of them on the same one, because we also need Brennan as the DM. And Brennan comes in dramatically off to the side. Like, the boys go on stage, and then Brennan picks up Paul's mic, which is not one of the mics that I have.
The only one.
Yeah. And he does a huge long intro into it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I have that backup of everything, because that's not a mic that I would, with this setup, like, I wouldn't even do a voice of God mic if I needed 6 inputs. Like, we have the 5 guys, like, all there. And, like, voice of God is the last one I would think of. So, yeah, thank God for the Zoom backup mic. I mean, it was a very good intro. I'm glad that we captured it.
Yeah. Now that I'm doing video for this podcast, which I didn't do for any of the other podcasts I did, I am so nervous about losing things, because I'm like, I don't have a way to do a video backup. So I'm just relying on like Squadcast and Riverside and their cloud backups, which the cloud backups I've noticed are like 720p and like very choppy, and I would not want to use them for video. You can make do with the audio if you need to, but like right now I have Audio Hijack running, capturing the audio from Chrome. That's just your audio without my input. And then I have my input from my mic recording separate in Audio Hijack. And sometimes I would do Riverside, and also have Logic running for my microphone. Like,
I bet your computer loves that.
I got a Mac Studio, so okay. I tried to make sure it would be okay.
Oh, that's right. You do video, so like you need a good setup.
Yeah. Once I realized I was going to be doing video more, I was like, I need to do something, because I was like running video off of a laptop. And granted, it was still like a MacBook that I had not quite maxed out, but like came pretty close. I was like, this Mac Studio sounds like a good tax write-off.
Yeah, exactly. Oh gosh, I have a MacBook laptop that is... What happened was I was using a personal laptop for a while, and then it's old, so it started not holding a charge. And my boss was like, well, we need to get you a new Mac right now. What's the easiest way to get you one? I lived in Brooklyn at the time, so like there was a Mac store pretty close, and we like... they have a delivery service. Like, essentially you can get a MacBook on DoorDash.
Amazing.
And we were like, well, what's the best one that has, like, I think I have 16 gig RAM. I better have 16 gig RAM. Yeah. We're like, what's the one that, like, you don't have to build out? Like, you just get it right now. The 16 RAM. Great. Perfect. That one.
Yeah. I have 64 gig RAM and a 1 terabyte drive, and it is perpetually full. And I'm just like, okay, I got to move all of these files off, because when some of my clients will film at a studio, they will send me 3 camera angles plus like a live switch backup. And each camera angle sometimes is like a 70 gigabyte file, depending on if it was like over an hour. It's just, it's so much space. I have multiple SSDs. I have spinning disk hard drives plugged into a dock into my Mac Studio right now just to get more space to like archive stuff.
Oh my God, yeah, I do not envy our video editor Tom's what he must deal with whenever he's rendering anything. I'm like, my render today for Mabim Bam, which is like a normal show, I don't know why it was taking this long. It took like 10 full minutes to mix down. I'm like, what is happening? And I'm like, he has to deal with like 30, like 40-minute renders probably.
Yeah.
Like every time. I'm like, I can't.
I walk
deal with
away and
that.
like go have a snack or like go make dinner.
Yeah.
Like while
Like,
the
I'll be
video's
back.
exporting.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll be back later. If it took me that
Yeah.
long to like export all of the podcasts, I would never get anything done.
Thankfully, I don't mix everything that I do, so I'm not like doing the final bounce. So I just like
Oh, yeah.
export like 15, 20 minutes at a time for audio, and there's like no effects on it, no plugins, no nothing. So thankfully, I don't have that to deal with for a lot of the shows. But every once in a while, yeah, I used to edit a show that would do like 3-hour episodes.
Oh, blank check. Sorry. I think that editing blank check actually helped a lot with getting the vibe for Bim Bam, because I did have to
Okay.
do an edit test before I got the job. They sent me an old episode of Bim Bam to like edit down. Blank check is a lot of what I call endurance comedy, which is like, you think that this is like taking a long time for them to make a point, but that's part of the whole, like, that's part of the
Yeah.
whole thing, is they're like taking a long walk to to whatever point they're getting to, but usually it pays off. And also that's what the listeners expect at this point.
I actually have one more question for you from a friend of the show, Travis Newton, who was a guest as well. He had asked me to ask you if they still use the dog clicker when
Yes.
they make a mistake. Okay.
So yes and no. They don't, and so Bim Bam doesn't anymore. They do use it on the besties. So I'm wondering if just Russ Frushtick has it in his house or something. But the besties use it quite a lot. And occasionally Justin uses it for Sawbones. But more often than not, they just will clap. Travis will clap or tap his mic, or they'll clap, or they'll say, Rachel, edit that out. Sometimes they say that and they don't mean it.
I get that every once in a while too. It'll be like, Deanna, edit that out. No, Deanna, leave that in. And I'm just
Exactly.
like, I'm going to let the producer deal with that later.
There's no one else to deal with that on my end.
That's fair for
Ugh.
you.
Sometimes they'll say, the episode last week for the first one for Max Fun Drive, they started it with a fake bit about how they named the year 20 Thunder Drive to make it sound like 20 Max Fun Drive. And then they were like, oh no, we got caught saying that. Rachel, edit that out. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a fake Rachel, edit that out.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to know when it's a real edit that out and a fake edit that out.
Yeah, it gets a little bit worrisome sometimes. Like, usually in the besties, when they say it, they mean it. But sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for breaking down the differences in how some of these shows are edited and how you got your start with the McElroys. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me. This has been really fun.